So, you guys know that I talk about things that I am learning about or have recently learned about or I'm doing myself or, you know, working through the initial stages of something. So, you get a lot of rolling up the sleeves and in the trenches type of work from me. And this is one of those things. So, before we dive in, I just want you to understand that rest is something that I have never prioritized. It is something that I have always said I didn't need. Um, and I guess just over like the last year or less, God is just showing me the error of my ways and um, has brought up stories for me that I believe about rest, has rewritten what I think rest is and what it's not. And so I want to share everything that I'm learning because I know, yesterday on Instagram, I put a poll in my stories about rest. And so many of you said the same thing that, rest is something you struggle to do as well. And so I just want to start off with the perspective that rest is actually a gift from God to us. And it's not something that we need to strive for or something that we need to check a box with or something to add to our to-do list. It's actually a gift from the Lord for us to enjoy because he knows we need it, and he's known this since the beginning, right? 6 days he created the world, and the seventh day he rested. And I always think if God prioritized rest, it's a good thing for us. I've always said that and never really believed it or did anything about it. But as I'm getting older, as I'm doing inner work, have realized at various stages, how much stress I actually carry in my body at all times. And, how much tension, especially for me, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I'm like lifting my shoulders towards my ears, right? Like, do you guys have this too, where you're like, relax and you have to like physically tell your body to, pull your shoulders back and down? And like that was me for years. Like I never realized that all of my attention would go to my shoulders. And once I became aware of this, well, then it was like a constant battle all day long of relax, like feeling my shoulders enter to my ears and relax. and and so that was just like a practical in the moment, like of what do I do with this? But that original awareness led to just deeper inner work, if you will, of okay, well, where is this coming from and why? And so God's bringing me on this journey of, striving less and resting more, doing to being, and breaking free from some stories of resting as lazy. Like when I'm resting, I'm being lazy, which is so far from the truth. Lazy does not describe me in any way, shape, or form. But this is a story that over my life I've told myself. Honestly, I don't know where it came from. Maybe somewhere in childhood, like I grew up on a farm, so there was always work to be done. And so it might have stemmed from that because there was always some work to be done, if you weren't working, then you were being lazy, right? And so I don't know. I don't know where exactly that came from, but that's just my best guess. But then over the years, I've also taken it upon myself to be the strong one for people. And I've shared this about my emotional growth journey as well. Is that I've felt the need to be the strong one for people, to take on their pains, to take on their emotions, and to bear them alone by myself. But also because I wasn't emotionally healthy, I didn't actually process through anything. So I just held on to everything. And so all of this has translated again to more attention to my body, add in not resting, and you got a mess, right? And so full rest for me has, looked probably different. And I'm sure rest for you would look different too. And so, based on the Bible, it's every 7 days you have a 24-hour period of rest, right? I am not to 24 hours yet. And there are things that we do every week as a family that do bring rest. And like we have pizza night, we've had pizza family movie night as much as we could for probably like the last 10 years, like every Friday night, as long as we're not doing something else, which usually we're not. That's what we've done. And that can look like anything. That can look like me making my homemade pizza recipe that I've made now for probably 10 years. It's a real crowd pleaser. But I said, if I haven't mastered it after 10 years, I should probably give up. But I enjoy that. I enjoy that process, and it doesn't add more stress on me because it's something that I have done for so long now that um, it's just innate within me. And, it's something that my family loves. And so, having that time together has, brought me rest and joy. And so the one thing that I want to encourage you with on this is to look at rest as something that fills you up, that leaves you feeling full afterwards. It's something that leaves you feeling fulfilled and not depleted, because there are things like counterfeit comforts and counterfeit rest that we implement. And, for me, this has looked like anything that I grasp for in the moment because I am feeling so depleted or so stressed or so tense. And I haven't been intentional with my rest enough. So it's like, I'm in my car and I only filled the gas tank so full, and now it's running on fumes. And now I'm grasping and trying to get it, get that vehicle to keep going until, the next time I have planned rest or what have you. And so for me, these can be shopping. How easy is it to put something in your Amazon cart, hit pay, and it's here within it, sometimes the same day. Like, it's pretty crazy. We live close to a distribution facility, so sometimes we can have our stuff in the same day. It's just crazy. It can look like binging, something on Netflix and, checking out and just really disassociating myself from the situation. It can be eating, it can be grabbing for things that don't make me feel my best, especially like salty and sweet. Or it can be, mindlessly scrolling on my phone and completely checking out and not interacting with people around me. Those are some of the biggest ones for me that can really be counterfeits. So they leave me feeling that dopamine hit in the moment. They leave me feeling good for a second, but afterwards they leave me feeling more depleted and worse than before I engaged in those things. And so when it comes to rest for me, it's something that leaves me feeling full, that leaves me feeling refreshed, refueled, refilled. And honestly, that kind of rest can only come from the Lord. And, but it can look a lot of different ways. So the thing that's really been refreshing my soul lately is just getting outside in nature. Anything in nature always wraps me in God's love and just puts me into a posture of being in awe of, what he's done, what he's created, the intricacies of it all, the beauty of it all. Like, it also gives me perspective on how small I am, and how big he is and how awesome he is. And, how it just fills me up in that sense, and especially things with water, so nature and water. And so for me lately, it's been paddleboarding. I paddleboarded for the first time, I think, when we went on a cruise that I had earned through my Shackley business back in, I think it was 2019. And one of the ports we stopped, we did swimming with dolphins, and then there were like some water activities, and paddleboarding was one of them. And I decided to do it, and it was really fun. Like, it was really challenging, but so simple, right? And I did it again when we were in Jamaica, Zach and I, this last time, just a couple of years ago. And again, loved it. There's just something about the water, but also like being physical at the same time, and I was telling Zach, I was like, it's interesting because I really feel like paddleboarding to me is resting, where I'm sure other people would think that that is not rest at all. Because, the next day I am kind of sore from it, but like, in that moment, in that time, like I don't even like think of it as like work, because it just fills me so much to be in those moments. The other one for me is snorkeling, though I don't have anywhere around here in Illinois to really do that. My favorite place that I did that was in Roatan, Honduras. That was the most beautiful water I've ever seen in my life. And then in Jamaica was pretty amazing too. Um, I just love seeing God's creation and seeing things that I would normally see, and just having those moments of being in tune and listening, and there is rest involved too, in the sense of like sometimes I just like I don't normally stand when I paddleboard, because that to me is a lot more work. It's a lot more challenge because I'm trying to balance whatever. So like usually I just like kneel on my board or sit on my board while I'm doing it, more like a kayak or a canoe. And so then I can also like stop what I'm doing and I can like lay down if it's in the lake next to us, because there's not really like a current like in a river, right? Or even on a huge lake. But it's much more peaceful and everything. And so for me, that has been my rest as of late. And but I can't always do that. And so that is where I'm at in my challenge lately, is like, what are other ways that I can intentionally rest, to continue to refill, by God only, and like, what does that look like? And, sometimes that it just takes some like looking back at, when I was a child, or, somewhere in my mid kid years, what are the things that I did that really brought me joy? Like whether that was, doing something that God really gifted me at, or, just doing something where I do feel more in touch with him, and just more present in those moments, like painting, which is something I haven't really done for a very long time, but I used to do a lot more of it. Like things like that. But again, for me, the most simple thing is just to get in nature, to go for a walk, or even just sit outside on the porch in the sun while not doing anything, but just being there in that moment. Like those are the things that leave me feeling full. And the thing with rest, you've heard me mention a couple times now, is being intentional about it. And you've heard me say before that if something is a priority, you'll make time for it, right? And so this is one of those things that it's not about doing, but it is about setting that time and guarding that time. And, putting it in your plan, because at the end of the day, if you're like me, it's very easy to be like, well, it's okay, I'll just do that next week. Like, but then you get into your week and you're feeling so depleted that now you're grabbing for those counterfeit comforts again, and feeling worse off, especially if, you have health goals and you want to eat in a way that fuels your body well. If reaching for the crappy snacks is one of those counterfeit comforts, then that's ultimately making an even more of a negative impact on who you are and the decisions you've made ahead of time, right? And so like we need to understand that this is very countercultural. Our culture, especially Western culture, we go, 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 go. We do, and we don't slow down for anything, right? If you've ever traveled to any other place in the world, pretty much all other places have this in a much better way than we do. I've spent several trips in Ecuador, and people still come home for lunch and take a nap, and time is not as rigid there as it is here, and there's a lot more time for margin and those kinds of things. And here in our Western society, this idea of rest is very countercultural. The idea of doing less and getting more, right? Or doing nothing and getting something, like that doesn't really make sense even in our human brains. And honestly, if you burn yourself out by working nonstop every single day, 7 days a week, what does the quality of your work start to look like? What does the inside of your mind start to look like? What does your health start to look like? What do your relationships start to look like, right? Versus if you were to intentionally every week, you work hard the other days, but you intentionally rest, what could the quality of your work begin to look like, right? I mean, we've seen study after study out there of, people who work remotely, or people who work, a 4-day work week, or, different things like that, or they have, set hours that, allows them more of that margin and more of that time off. Like those are happier employees, and they're actually much more efficient, and they do well. And when people are, put in positions where they're doing work that, that lights them up and brings them joy, and that is one of their strengths, they're going to do much better than if they're put in a position where, they're just expected to do all the things and to do them well when it pays no attention to strengths and where they're gifted, right? And so if you take nothing away from this, I hope that you take away that rest is essential, and you are not serving yourself or anyone else around you, and especially not God, well, by ignoring your need to rest. You are also putting on an air of self-reliance and essentially making yourself your God. And I say this with so much understanding, because this is what God's been putting on my heart too, and challenging me with, and just peeling back the layers of, pride that I have piled on myself over the years, and is breaking me and refining me through fire. And it's painful and the pruning doesn't feel good, but it's essential for the growth that He has for us. So I say this with all understanding. I get it. It's not fun, but I do challenge you to change the way you think about rest, and to do the inner work. Grab your journal. We talked about unscripted journaling last week, or the week before, whatever week that was. Do that practice of dumping everything out and see what God reveals to you through that. Are you being your own God? Are you putting your success on your shoulders? Are you trying to take God's glory through the work that you're doing, the things that you're making happen? Are you forcing things, or are you posturing yourself and positioning yourself to hear His voice, obey His voice, and work faithfully with the time that He wants you to, and resting faithfully with the time that He has gifted you? So again, I'm preaching to myself on this one. I hope you don't feel preached at. That is not my intention with this, but I have been so challenged personally that I want to extend this challenge to you, because I know other people out there just like me, you're listening and you are struggling with this too, or this is something you've never really thought about. And it's something that God wants to reveal to you as well. I just want you to know that it's a journey, and it can feel really heavy to go through these things, to be challenged, to be broken, to be refined, to be pruned. It's heavy stuff, and it's messy, but it's worth it to soften us to the things that God wants us to prioritize, to truly seek after Him, to truly have a heart that desires His will above all else, and lays down our pride and understands that through our lives, it's a living sacrifice for His glory, and however He wants to lead us and use us. But if we're out there ignoring rest, or even pridefully saying, I don't need it, we're doing a disservice to our faith, and physically and mentally to ourselves. And so I would love to know from this episode, if something really stuck out to you, then share this to your stories and tag me. I would love to know what it brought out for you. And if you have a way of rest that truly fills your soul, I would love for you to share that with me. because I think there are so many things. I mean, there are so many differences in all of us, right? Zach said that mowing the lawn is super relaxing and restful for him and really peaceful and like fills him up. Mowing the lawn for me is none of those things. It is not peaceful. It's usually get it done as quickly as possible because I've got, kids inside and, I'm trying to just check that box and get it done. And and so this is one of those things where like you might have some ideas that I haven't thought about that might be really great for me too, and I'd love to learn those. And other people might have some that you would like to try and could be really helpful. But again, for me, it's nature and water. Those two things like just really bring me into a space, into God's presence. And that's really what rest is about, is just giving us that peace, that stillness, and filling us in a way that only God can, but we look for every day of our lives in every way but God, don't we? I know I do. And most of the time, it's not looking to things. Most of the time, it's looking to myself to be the one to figure it out, to be the one to push through it, to, and working hard is a spiritual act of worship, but only when it is rooted in the Lord for His glory. Otherwise, it's like the boxer boxing the air aimlessly, right? So I hope this was encouraging to you today. And I hope above all, and my prayer is that you take time to intentionally rest, to lean into the source that fills, and to step away, or to at least create an awareness around those counterfeit comforts in your life that you jump towards to fill something that they never were able to fill in the first place, and to look to God for that. I hope you enjoyed this. Take care.